Well, welcome back to Niger Delta Today. Let's head straight to Rivers State, where since the Rivers State sole administrator Ibas made his first major shake-up in the local government democratic structure in the state, where he appointed administrators. Torrents of reactions have accompanied his decision from lawyers, civil society organizations, pandemic, human rights activists, and concerned Nigerians alike. But lawyers are hammering on contempt of court, considering Justice Adam Mohammed of the Federal High Court sitting in Port Harcourt had following a seat restraint Ibas on Tuesday by appointing administrators of the local government in the state. Others, like human rights activists, believe Ibas was appointed to make regulations, not appointment. Is Ibas culpable of misuse and abuse of his administrator roles? And with the PDP governors calling for the Supreme Court review of the emergency rule legality, are we near an end to the current leadership provisions in Rivers State? Mr. Marvelisian is an organization development consultant and vocal analyst on issues affecting the Niger Delta. He joins us here on Niger Delta Today. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Marvel.
Good afternoon, Sifon.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
It's been a while. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Xavier.
Well, I'm not sure we've talked since the new development, the emergency rule in Rivers State, and the recent local government administrators put in place by Ibas as the sole administrator in Rivers State. Well, we know that a lot of reactions have come in following the emergency rule declaration by President Bola Tinubu. We've seen also that Nigerians have spoken about it. Lawyers alike have spoken about the legality and how constitutional it is for the president to make that announcement. And then just recently, 11 PDP governors are requesting that the Supreme Court review the powers of the president to ascertain whether he is indeed able, or can he really declare a state of emergency, thereby installing a sole administrator in any state of the federation, which is, of course, what is the reality in Rivers State now. Let's look at it from that perspective. How have you received the emergency rule announcement in Rivers State so far?
Yeah, Xavier, you see, when we talk about Nigeria, some things can be very, very embarrassing, and part of it is this declaration of a state of emergency. It is not the declaration in itself that is embarrassing. It is the nature of it being seen as suspension of democratic structures in Rivers State, because a state of emergency could have been introduced without necessarily suspending the governor. A state of emergency could have been introduced without suspending any of the arms of government. In Rivers State, the legislative arm of government has been suspended, the executive arm of government has been suspended, and that is completely an embarrassing aberration. These kind of things has a precedent in Nigeria during Goodluck Jonathan's time, and we know what has been going on in the northern part of Nigeria, that's Borno State and the rest, and yet the governor was still working as the governor, even though a state of emergency was declared for administrative or for security reasons, or to maintain peace in the area. And that is what would have been expected in Rivers State. But in this instance, suspending the governor and the legislative arm of government has become very, very embarrassing to a country that the democracy, even though we are going to count 25 years, is still very young. I don't think this should have come up at this time. And therefrom, you have the sole administrator that has come in. You say there is a constitutional right of the president to declare a state of emergency, and he had done so. The Senate, as they approved it, could have also helped the president by enlightening the people on the reason the state of emergency was needed. Perhaps the president was correct to declare a state of emergency. Just perhaps the president was correct. But in so doing, the National Assembly did not also allow this to pass through due process by openly, transparently deliberating on it and intellectually bringing out the facts and maybe discussing in depth the provisions as contained in Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution in Nigeria. So these are things that we find as very, very an embarrassing aberration in a country like Nigeria, that we should be thinking of how to grow our democracy.
But yet again, Mr. Marvel, these two arms of government seem not to be getting along. And we need both arms of government to work together to ensure that there is, the governance process is smooth. So in this case, what would the president what would have done? Because the issue had to do with the House of Assembly and the government, not even the security architecture of the state.
That's why I say perhaps the president was correct. But you have to do it transparently in order for you to gain the trust of the citizens that what you are doing is right. Don't forget, there are two parts to it. In the first part, you have declared a state of emergency. You have suspended democratic structures in the state. On the other part, you have introduced a sole administrator to the state who seem not to understand the duties of a sole administrator in an emergency, a state of emergency situation. There he is making appointments to positions in the local government and making appointments to boards and commissions in the state. He is just a placeholder, an interim government, and he should be operating within the framework of ensuring that there is peace in Rivers State and see how they can transit as soon as possible take back the government to the democratically elected structures, as it were. Now, there is a serious crisis going on, constitutional crisis going on. That is why you hear the PDP governors going to court. I think this morning I also heard some group of people going to court to challenge the state of emergency that has been declared. All that is based on the operation of this state of the administration of this state of emergency in Rivers State as it currently stands.
Well, Mr. Marvel, recently the Take It Back protests had hit the streets of the country. In Abuja, we saw it. In Edo, we saw it in Rivers as well, even in Lagos. But in Rivers, it particularly took a different turn, where we saw policemen, incidences of tear-gassed citizens in the streets of Rivers State. But then, when one of the spokespersons for the protests gave his view as regards what's happening in Rivers State, he described the sole administratorship provisions in the state as alien to the Rivers people, saying they don't have a social contract with the current sole administratorship provision in the state. Now, there is a political twist to all of this, and comments are that this could be a ploy by the APC government to take over Rivers State. Do you see it from that light, or is this solely about ensuring peace and order in Rivers State and eventually restoring the democratic rule in Rivers State?
You see, Xavier, there is something about intention and reality. There is a power in perception as well. The federal government is an APC government, so if they make such policies, if they take such a stand on an opposition state, of course, the perception could be that you want to take the state to APC. So if people's perception goes in that line, then the federal government created room for that to be in the first place. If this was done more transparently, maybe the people will also see reason why there should be a state of emergency. But for whatever reason, you cannot easily justify suspension of democratic structures in a democratic state like Nigeria. There's no justification for it. There are other ways that you can use in resolving this process. If, for example, this is encouraged or it stands as a precedent to other things that may be happening, you may find out that after 2027 election, people may just begin to have ideas of fomenting trouble in their state and wanting a state of emergency to be declared. So you know this story in the Bible that talks about it, two women, struggling for a baby, and the baby, this one says, okay, divide the baby. The mother that did not own the child said, divide the baby, knowing that if the baby dies, she stands to lose nothing. So when people lose election and becomes desperate, they may just foment trouble in the state and believe that a state of emergency could be introduced. And if we do not check what is coming out from the judiciary. I just have to mention the judiciary in this case because Rivers State situation may not have gotten to where it is today if we had a very strong institution in the judiciary. If we had a very strong institution, we would not be having this kind of conflicting judgments coming out from the courts in Nigeria that has aided this kind of situation that we're having presently in Rivers State. So if people begin to distrust the government, it is because the institutions of government have acted in ways. You think about how the 2023 elections were conducted, the beavers, the IREF thing, have made people lose so much confidence in government. And in the heat of it, you still see judgments coming out from the courts that are not seemingly transparent. So the people do not have sufficient confidence. The citizens do not have sufficient confidence in government. So anything that comes out from government, it becomes suspicious. So if the people begin to feel that the APC government wants to take the PDP state and introducing all sort of things. I think yesterday, that judge accused Wike outrightly. I read it in the papers that Wike is the cause of this. Why? He supported it by saying, on Monday, Wike was in Rivers State, moving from place to place, had meetings with the governor before they released the list of those appointees. So if it is so, it is the citizens will easily believe that it is Wike that made the appointments that was announced by the sole administrator. Pardon?
Yeah. Yet again, there is no evidence to prove that he was actually doing this.
There is no evidence, but I'm just quoting that judge.
Okay.
That said he was there.
Mr. Marvel, don't you think that the sole administrator is acting based on the decision of the Supreme Court? Because remember that the elections was cancelled, so he needs administrators at the local government level. Also, the Supreme Court also cancelled the procurement. He cancelled the sole administrator cancelled the procurement of the procurement procedures there. Still based on the decision of the Supreme Court. So is he not acting based on the decision of the Supreme Court?
Let me remind you that I'm an organization development consultant. There are best global practices when it comes to administration. So you have the local government service in place. In the local government service, after when you remove the political appointees or elected officials of the local government, there is still leadership.
The civil service.
In the local government service, you call them the head of service in the local government level. You could call them head of administration or whatever name you may choose, designation you may choose to give. But automatically, if things like this come up, the leadership will drop on them. You don't need to make a political appointment because you are only a placeholder. You are an interim government. You are there to ensure continuity of programs of government, not to introduce fresh government, not to give contracts, not to award contracts. It's just to maintain a situation that you know that it is interim. It should be 1 month, 2 months. In this case, they said 6 months. But you should act as if you just have a day to stay and maintain what you are seeing and ensure that there is peace, you ensure that salaries are paid, you ensure you receive money for these payments. But you see, what he has done, he has placed himself as if he was the elected executive governor of Rivers State, and that is an aberration.
Well, Mr. Marvel, we're out of time, but one last question. What would you recommend currently in Rivers State? People are calling for a reinstatement of the democratically elected government of Siminalayi Fubara.
Immediate reinstatement of Fubara. Immediate reinstatement of all the political structures. It wouldn't have mattered if the House of Assembly would have impeached Fubara. It goes through democratic processes. The democracy has a way, an inbuilt mechanism to sustain itself. So they don't need a third party or someone from Abuja to come and help hold anything. Likewise, in Nigeria, there is inbuilt mechanism to run Nigeria in a manner that we don't need the international community to come and tell us what to do in Nigeria. In the same vein, you don't need people from Abuja to come and tell a state governor and its government and the people of a state how to run their affairs in that state. They could have taken care of themselves.
Well, we'll keep our eyes on the Supreme Court and see what responses they're going to give to the 11 PDP governors who have approached it for a review of the current emergency setting in Rivers State.
Academic exercise.
we'll hope that...
Let's watch and see.
We'll definitely get to find out what would be the outcome of all of this. Thank you very much, Mr. Marvel, Organization Development Consultant. Thank you for coming on Niger Delta today.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming around. Always an interesting time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the size of Niger Delta today. Many thanks for staying tuned. Follow our activities on our social media platforms, all of which you can find on our website, adbntv.com. My name is Savio Robert, wishing you a terrific afternoon.
And I am Sifon Ode. Good afternoon.